It was a typical Tuesday afternoon for Alex Turner, a young man who worked as a mechanic in the quiet outskirts of the city. The sun was starting to set, casting a warm, golden glow over the rusty cars parked around his workshop. There was nothing unusual about the day, until everything changed in an instant. Alex was wiping down his hands with a rag, his mind on the mundane tasks that awaited him, when a sudden loud noise filled the air. It wasn't the usual sounds of passing cars or people shouting. This was different. The ground beneath his feet shook. It was like a heavy explosion, rattling the very air around him. Alex dropped the rag, his heart racing as his eyes darted toward the sky. He didn't know what it was, but it felt like something out of a dream or a nightmare. He squinted as he looked up, and that's when he saw it. A massive fiery object was falling from the sky, cutting through the air like a streak of lightning. It was too big to be a meteor and too strange to be anything from Earth. Alex stood frozen, his eyes wide with disbelief, as the object came closer and closer, growing larger by the second. His mind struggled to comprehend what he was seeing, but before he could make sense of it, the object crashed into the ground with an earth-shattering explosion. Dust and debris flew into the air, blinding Alex momentarily. When the dust settled, Alex couldn't believe what he saw. There, in the middle of the field behind his workshop, lay a massive, smoking crater. The object that had crashed from the sky was unlike anything he had ever seen. It was metallic, sleek, and glowing faintly with strange symbols that seemed to pulse with energy. The sound of sizzling metal filled the air as the ship, or whatever it was, slowly cooled from the impact. Alex's curiosity quickly overcame his fear. Despite the obvious danger, he took a few cautious steps forward. His heart was pounding in his chest, but his feet moved as if on their own. He had to see it up close. As he neared the crater, he noticed the air around it felt different. Charged, almost electric. It made the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. He reached the edge of the crater and peered inside, only to be met with a sight that made his stomach drop. Lying inside the wreckage was a figure. It was humanoid, but its features were unlike anything Alex had ever seen. The figure had smooth, dark skin that shimmered in the fading sunlight, and its body was encased in a silver armor-like suit that seemed to glow. But the most striking thing was its face. Alien, yet somehow beautiful. The creature's eyes were shut, its long black hair cascading down its shoulders. For a moment, Alex wondered if this was some kind of hallucination, or if he was dreaming. He crouched down, his mind racing. Was this some kind of alien? The thought seemed impossible, yet everything about the situation screamed that it was true. He reached out tentatively, his hand hovering over the alien's body. It looked like it was breathing, but only barely. Without thinking, Alex carefully placed his fingers on its wrist, feeling for a pulse. To his surprise, he found one. A faint but steady beat. He had no idea what to do. Part of him wanted to run, to tell someone about what he had found. But another part of him felt an odd sense of responsibility. He couldn't leave this creature here, especially if it was from another world. He had to help. He quickly looked around, his eyes searching for anything that could help him. He noticed a nearby shack with an old first aid kit hanging on the wall. His heart raced as he ran to grab it. As he returned to the crater, his hands trembling, he tried to steady himself. This was no ordinary situation. This was something that could change his life forever, but Alex didn't know how or what to expect. He opened the kit and pulled out what he could: bandages, antiseptic, anything that might help. He knelt beside the alien's body and began to work, carefully cleaning its wounds and wrapping the injured areas. Despite the overwhelming strangeness of it all, Alex found himself focusing on the task, doing everything he could to help this mysterious being. Suddenly, the alien's hand twitched. Alex froze, his heart stopping for a second. Was it waking up? He wasn't sure what to do. Should he run? Should he call for help? But before he could make up his mind, the alien's eyes snapped open, revealing a deep, intense gaze that seemed to see right through him. Alex gasped, his breath catching in his throat. The alien didn't move immediately. It just stared at him, its gaze unwavering. Alex's heart pounded in his chest as he tried to make sense of the situation. The alien opened its mouth, and for a moment, Alex expected some strange, alien language to spill out. But instead, it spoke in perfect English, though its voice was deep and powerful, like a storm. "Who are you?" the alien asked, its voice shaking the air around them. Alex's mind went blank. He had no idea how to answer. He had just helped an alien, and now it was asking him who he was. Was this real? Was he dreaming? But then, the alien spoke again, and this time, its voice was full of strength. "You have saved me," the alien said, slowly sitting up. "But it is you who will need saving next." Alex's confusion deepened. He didn't know what was happening, but one thing was clear. His life had just been changed forever. And whatever came next, he was about to be pulled into something much bigger than he could have ever imagined. Alex's heart was still pounding in his chest as he watched the alien slowly rise from the ground, its movements deliberate and measured. The creature's eyes never left his, and Alex couldn't shake the feeling that this being wasn't just some random extraterrestrial. There was a sense of authority in its presence, something fierce and regal that was hard to ignore. "Who are you?" Alex stammered, the words escaping his lips before he could stop them. His mind was racing, struggling to process everything that had just happened. 1 minute, he was going about his regular day, and the next, he was face to face with an alien, one that appeared to be alive, and from the looks of it, conscious. The alien's eyes softened, as if it understood the confusion written across Alex's face. It raised one hand, and for a moment, Alex thought it might attack. Instead, the alien simply brushed the dirt off its shimmering armor and stood tall, its presence overwhelming in the best and worst way. It looked down at Alex with a calm intensity. "I am not from your world." The alien spoke again, its voice smoother this time, yet carrying an unmistakable weight. "But you are from mine." Alex's brow furrowed. "What do you mean, from yours?" His thoughts were spinning. This couldn't be happening. Could it? Was this some elaborate prank, or was he caught up in something far more complicated than he could comprehend? The alien looked away for a moment, as if contemplating something deeply personal. Then it spoke again, this time its voice a little softer, almost as though it was revealing something it hadn't planned to. "I was sent here to seek out someone like you. You are the one I have been searching for, the one who can help me." Alex's mind raced. Help? What could he possibly help with? He was just a mechanic, an ordinary guy living an ordinary life. The last thing he imagined he would be doing was saving an alien queen, or, as he was beginning to suspect, someone much more important than he could ever fathom. "I don't understand," Alex said, his voice shaky. "I don't know anything about you or your world. I'm just a guy trying to get by." The alien's gaze softened, and it seemed to consider Alex's words carefully. "I know," it said quietly, "but you were always destined for this. You have a purpose, and whether you believe it or not, you're already a part of something far larger than you realize." Alex took a step back, his mind still reeling. This was insane. Was it possible? Was he really meant to be involved in some kind of galactic conflict? He had no skills, no special abilities. He was just a mechanic. He didn't even have the courage to speak up in situations that made him uncomfortable, let alone take part in an intergalactic war. What do you need from me?" Alex asked, his voice barely above a whisper, his eyes darting around the area as if looking for an escape. The alien reached out and placed a hand gently on his shoulder, a gesture that, somehow, seemed reassuring rather than threatening. Its grip was firm, yet the touch was surprisingly warm, comforting even. You are needed because you understand what it means to fight for what is right. The alien explained. I am a warrior, yes. But my strength alone cannot defeat the forces that seek to destroy both our worlds. I need someone who can stand beside me, who can help lead the charge. Someone who knows how to fight for the future of a people. Alex swallowed hard. The weight of the alien's words began to settle in, but there was something about the way it spoke, calm, yet urgent, that made him want to believe it. The creature's eyes held an intensity that Alex had never seen before, a fire that spoke of battles, loss, and a struggle that had raged for longer than he could imagine. You want me to fight? Alex asked incredulously. But I don't know how. I'm just a mechanic. I don't even know what I'm doing half the time. His voice trembled with uncertainty, but deep down, he could feel something shifting inside him, like a tiny spark of determination. The alien's expression didn't change, but there was a glimmer of respect in its eyes. It is not always the strongest who win wars, it said. Sometimes it is the ones who are willing to stand up, despite their fear. The ones who fight not because they are trained, but because they know the cost of inaction. And you, human, have something rare. The strength to make decisions when others hesitate. Alex took a deep breath. He had no idea what this alien was talking about, but somehow, the words struck a chord deep within him. He had always been someone who kept to himself, avoided conflict, and did his best to stay out of trouble. But this was something different. There was a part of him, small but growing, that couldn't just ignore what was happening. The alien stepped back slightly, lowering its hand from Alex's shoulder. I will help you learn, it said. Together, we can face what is coming. Alex's mind raced as he tried to process everything. But there was something in the alien's tone, something in the way it looked at him, that made him pause. Maybe he didn't have to be some hero. Maybe, just maybe, he could do something good, something that mattered. He met the alien's gaze and nodded slowly, a decision starting to form within him. All right, he said, his voice stronger now. I'll help, but you have to tell me what this is all about. What's happening? Why are we in danger? The alien's face grew serious, its expression darkening with a knowledge that Alex could not yet understand. The danger you face is far greater than you can imagine. A war is coming, a war that threatens everything you hold dear. But we can stop it, if we act quickly. The alien turned and started walking toward the wreckage, motioning for Alex to follow. Come, it said. We don't have much time. The fate of both our worlds rests on what happens next. And just like that, Alex found himself stepping into a world of danger, mystery, and unexpected alliances. What lay ahead was unknown, but one thing was certain. He was no longer just an ordinary mechanic. His life was about to change forever, and the choices he made from this point on would determine the fate of two worlds. Alex's footsteps echoed in the silent night as he followed the alien, unsure of what lay ahead. The air was thick with tension, every step feeling like it was pulling him deeper into a world he didn't understand. Despite the overwhelming sense of unease, a strange excitement was building within him. He had been thrust into something unimaginable, and somehow he couldn't back out now. The alien was right. There was no turning back. The alien led him to a clearing where a small craft lay partially hidden behind trees, its sleek surface reflecting the faint light of the moon. It looked nothing like the spaceships Alex had seen in movies. This one was far more organic, almost alive, with glowing symbols etched into its hull, pulsing faintly as though the ship itself was breathing. Is this your ship? Alex asked, his voice tinged with awe. The alien nodded, turning to face him. This is my vessel. Yes, it is called the Vizier, a ship unlike anything you have on your planet. It has been with me for many years, and it will take us to where we need to go. Alex hesitated, still trying to wrap his head around everything. His mind was reeling with questions. What was this alien's mission? What did it want from him? And most importantly, why had it chosen him? He had no skills, no experience, and no connection to anything beyond Earth. He was just a mechanic, an average guy. Yet somehow, he was at the center of something vast and incomprehensible. So, where exactly are we going? Alex asked, his curiosity finally getting the better of him. The alien's gaze hardened as it glanced at the ship, its expression grave. We are going to a place called the Nexus, a central meeting point for all the key players in this conflict. It is the last place where we can gather allies and plan our next move. Once we reach the Nexus, we will be able to make a stand, but we must act quickly. The enemy is closing in. Alex's mind struggled to process the words. He had heard stories of intergalactic battles, wars that spanned entire galaxies, but he had never once thought he would be involved in one. It felt like he had fallen into the middle of a fantasy he wasn't prepared for. His hands trembled slightly as he tried to calm his racing thoughts. "Who's the enemy?" Alex asked, his voice barely a whisper. The sense of urgency in the alien's voice was unsettling, but it was the only thing that seemed to make sense in the madness of the situation. The alien's expression grew darker, its eyes narrowing as it stared out into the night. The Trak, an ancient race of conquerors. They have been expanding their empire for centuries, leaving destruction in their wake. They are ruthless, and they will stop at nothing to subjugate every world they come across. If we don't act now, Earth will be their next target. Alex's heart sank. He had seen the movies, read the books. The concept of an alien invasion wasn't new to him. But this was different. This was real. And Earth was in the crosshairs. "So, what exactly do you need me for?" Alex asked again, the weight of the alien's words finally settling in. He wasn't a soldier, a strategist, or a fighter. He had no idea what to do in the face of an enemy like that. The alien turned its gaze back to Alex, its expression unwavering. "You are not just any human. You are connected to something greater than yourself. Your world may seem small, but it has a strength, an untapped potential that the Trak have never encountered. You have the power to inspire, to lead others, to rally them to our cause. That is why I have chosen you." Alex stared at the alien in disbelief. "You want me to lead a resistance?" he asked, incredulity rising in his voice. "I'm just a guy. I don't know the first thing about leading a war. Hell, I barely even know how to get through a normal day." The alien's gaze softened, a flicker of understanding in its eyes. "I know it seems impossible, but the greatest leaders are not born in perfect circumstances. They rise in moments of adversity. What the Trak do not understand is that strength comes not from the size of your army, but from the heart of those who fight for a cause." Alex wasn't sure what to make of it. He wasn't a hero. He had no experience fighting for anything other than his own survival, and even that felt like a stretch some days. Yet there was something about the alien's words that resonated deep inside him. He wasn't sure if it was the desperation in its eyes or the sheer weight of the responsibility that seemed to hang over him like a dark cloud, but he couldn't shake the feeling that he was meant to be here, even if he didn't fully understand why. Without another word, the alien motioned toward the ship. "Come," it said. "We have no time to waste. The journey to the Nexus will not be easy, and it will test you in ways you cannot yet comprehend. But you will have to trust in yourself and in the path that lies ahead." Alex nodded, though he still felt uncertain. But with each passing second, a new kind of resolve began to form inside him. He had always been someone who avoided conflict, someone who shied away from challenges. But now, faced with an alien war and the fate of Earth hanging in the balance, he realized that he didn't have the luxury of turning away. As they boarded the Vizier, Alex took a deep breath and tried to steady his nerves. He had no idea what he was about to face, but one thing was certain: his life would never be the same again. The war had already begun, and whether he was ready or not, he had just taken his first step into something far larger than he had ever imagined. Alex sat in the cockpit of the Vizier, still trying to process everything that had happened. The strange alien ship hummed around him, a soft glow emanating from the various consoles and the walls, making the whole place feel alive. His hands were tense on the controls as the ship began to lift off the ground, leaving Earth's atmosphere behind. He had never been anywhere near space, and now, here he was, surrounded by unfamiliar technology, heading toward an unknown destination, with no clear idea of what awaited him. His mind raced with questions, but one kept rising above the rest. Why had he been chosen? What made him, a simple mechanic, so special? As the ship ascended into the dark void of space, Alex couldn't help but feel a deep sense of insignificance. There were entire galaxies out there, and he was just a small speck in it all. But then, he remembered the alien's words. The power to inspire, to lead. Was that really him? He didn't know, but he was starting to feel the weight of it all. Beside him, the alien sat in silence, its eyes fixed on the view outside, watching as Earth shrank into the distance. Alex wanted to ask more questions, but the alien's presence was oddly commanding. He didn't want to risk annoying it or appearing weak. The air between them was thick with an unspoken tension, an uneasy alliance. Still, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that he had been pulled into something much larger than he had ever imagined. He had always been just a regular guy, but now it seemed like the fate of an entire planet, or even more, was resting on his shoulders. "We'll be entering the Nexus system in a few hours," the alien said, its voice breaking the silence. It was a soft, calm tone, but Alex could feel the gravity of the words. "You will meet the others. They are the leaders of the factions that oppose the Tarak, and they will help you understand the situation better." Alex nodded, though his heart skipped a beat. More leaders, more people with power, with experience. He wasn't sure he was ready for this, but there was no turning back now. He had already made a commitment by following the alien here. The ship was silent once again, save for the low hum of its engines. It felt like a strange kind of lull, but Alex couldn't let his guard down. The vast emptiness of space was all around them, and something told him that danger wasn't as far away as it seemed. Hours passed, or maybe it was minutes. Alex couldn't tell. Time seemed to lose all meaning as they traveled deeper into the unknown. He tried to steady his nerves, but he could feel his anxiety rising with every passing second. His thoughts kept returning to his life on Earth, to the small, quiet existence he had left behind. He had been a mechanic, working in a dusty shop, fixing cars and machines. Now he was caught in the middle of a galactic conflict. How had things gone so wrong so fast? Suddenly, a loud beep from one of the control panels broke his thoughts, and the alien immediately sprang into action. The ship's calm, rhythmic hum shifted to a sharper, more urgent tone. Alex's pulse quickened. "What's happening?" he asked, instinctively tightening his grip on the armrest. "Something is coming," the alien said, its tone uncharacteristically tense. "We are not alone in this space." Alex's breath caught in his throat. Was it the Tarak? Were they already here? The ship's lights flickered briefly, and the alien's hand shot out to steady one of the panels, its sharp eyes scanning the screens. "There is a disturbance in the area," it said, more to itself than to Alex. "Something powerful." Alex could feel his heart racing in his chest, but he kept his focus on the alien, searching for any sign of what was happening. "Are we under attack?" The alien turned its gaze to Alex, its eyes narrowed with an intensity he hadn't seen before. "We may be," it said grimly, "but this is not the Tarak. It is something else, something more dangerous." Suddenly, a loud, violent shake rippled through the ship, throwing both of them forward in their seats. Alex gritted his teeth, trying to brace himself. The ship groaned under the pressure, and the control panels beeped erratically, signaling the struggle of the Vizier to stay on course. "We need to maneuver," the alien barked. "Hold on." Alex gripped the edge of his seat, his body tensed and ready to react. The alien seemed to take control, its hands moving swiftly over the panels, adjusting the ship's trajectory with an ease that amazed Alex. The vizier lurched again, the ship veering sharply to the left. The force of the maneuver slammed Alex against his seat, and he felt a jolt of fear shoot through him. "What the hell is going on?" Alex gasped, eyes wide with fear. The alien's voice was calm, but laced with urgency. "A Turek scout ship is nearby. It must have detected our presence. It's trying to slow us down." Before Alex could respond, the ship lurched again, this time with far more force. The lights flickered as the hull groaned. Alex's heart pounded in his chest as he looked at the alien, whose face remained focused and resolute despite the chaos around them. "Get ready," the alien said, locking eyes with Alex. "It's going to get worse before it gets better." The sound of rapid beeping filled the cockpit as the ship continued to shake, and Alex's stomach twisted. He had no idea how to fight back, how to protect himself, let alone the ship. All he could do was trust the alien. But that trust was starting to feel fragile. What if they didn't make it through this? What if they were already too late? A sudden, loud crash echoed from the outside of the ship. Alex's eyes widened. The Turek were attacking. It wasn't a question anymore. The aliens' hands were moving in rapid succession across the control panels, but it was clear they were running out of options. "Hold on!" The alien shouted again, just as the ship dipped violently, sending them both hurtling toward the front window. Everything inside Alex's mind screamed to panic, but he knew better. He had to focus. The alien was right. They couldn't afford to lose control now. If they did, everything would be lost. As the ship swerved again, Alex realized one thing with chilling certainty. This was only the beginning. And whatever came next, he would have to face it head-on, whether he was ready or not. The vizier shuddered violently as it broke through the turbulent atmosphere of the Nexus system, pushing through space at unimaginable speeds. The stars outside had become a blur, and Alex's stomach churned from the constant motion. He gripped his seat tightly, trying to steady his nerves as the alien beside him focused intently on the controls, adjusting the ship's path with a precision that still amazed him. Despite the urgent situation, Alex couldn't help but feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him. He had left everything behind. His home, his family, his life as a mechanic, and now he was at the heart of something far larger than he could ever have imagined. His journey into space had only just begun, and already he had faced more than he could have ever prepared for. But through it all, something inside him had shifted. There was a strange resolve taking root within him. He wasn't just the mechanic anymore. He wasn't just an ordinary human on an alien ship. He had a purpose now, and that purpose had brought him here, to the Nexus, to the heart of the galactic conflict that was threatening the entire universe. "I know this is overwhelming," the alien said, its voice steady despite the chaos around them. "But you must understand, the Turek are not the only threat. They are just one piece of the puzzle." Alex glanced over at the alien, trying to make sense of the words. "What do you mean?" he asked. "If the Turek are the biggest threat, what else could be worse?" The alien hesitated for a moment before answering. "There are forces in this galaxy that care little for the balance of power or the survival of civilizations. The Turek are conquerors, but they follow a strict code. Their actions are brutal, but they are predictable. The true danger lies in those who do not follow such rules." Alex's mind raced. "What are you talking about? Who are these forces?" The alien's gaze hardened. "They are ancient and powerful. They have no allegiance to any one race, no regard for life. They destroy worlds for sport, wiping out entire civilizations without thought or mercy. We call them the Forgotten Ones, and they are the true power behind the Turek." The words hit Alex like a punch to the gut. He had heard of space empires and powerful alien races, but the idea that there were beings out there, beings who could wipe out entire civilizations without a second thought, was almost too much to comprehend. He felt small and insignificant, a simple mechanic from Earth, now thrust into the middle of a galactic war between ancient forces. "We have to stop them," Alex said, his voice shaky but resolute. "If they're behind the track, then we have to do something about it." The alien nodded, its eyes narrowing. "We will. But we need your help. Your humanity, your will to fight, is something that the Forgotten Ones have not anticipated. They underestimate you." Alex swallowed hard, the weight of the situation starting to sink in. He had never thought of himself as a fighter, as someone who could change the course of history. He was just a guy who fixed cars. But now, he was being asked to do something far beyond anything he had ever imagined. He was being asked to stand up against an ancient and unknowable force that could destroy everything. "Do you think I'm ready for this?" Alex asked, the doubt creeping into his voice, despite his best efforts to remain calm. The alien looked at him, its expression softening for a moment. "I don't know. But you don't have to be ready. You only have to be willing." Those words hit Alex harder than anything the alien had said. Willing. He had always thought that being prepared, being strong, was what mattered. But now, it seemed like the most important thing was the will to fight. The will to stand up when everything else seemed lost. "I'll do it," Alex said, his voice steady now. He didn't know how, or even if he could succeed, but he knew one thing for sure. He wasn't going to back down. The alien nodded, a slight glint of approval in its eyes. "Good. We will need that strength, and it will be tested in ways you can't yet imagine." As the ship continued its course through the Nexus system, Alex felt a strange sense of determination growing within him. The unknown stretched out before him, and he had no idea what dangers lay ahead. But for the first time in his life, he felt like he had a purpose, a reason to fight. And no matter how small he felt, no matter how overwhelming the forces were that they were about to face, Alex knew that he had to see this through. The lights in the cockpit flickered briefly, and the alien's attention shifted back to the control panels. The ship was nearing its destination, and Alex could sense that the time for talk was over. They were about to face the first real test of their alliance. "You should prepare yourself," the alien said, its tone turning serious again. "The Forgotten Ones will not show mercy. We must be ready for anything." Alex nodded, his mind focused on the path ahead. He didn't know what to expect, but one thing was certain: this was just the beginning. And whatever challenges lay ahead, he would face them with everything he had. The journey was far from over, but Alex had made his choice. He was no longer just a mechanic. He was part of something much bigger, and he was ready to fight for it. The tension in the air was palpable as the Vizier entered the last stretch toward their destination, a remote planet in the outer rim of the galaxy. The stars outside glimmered, distant and cold, as if to mock the warmth of the uncertainty and fear inside the ship. Alex had never imagined himself standing in a cockpit, let alone on a mission to face off against an ancient and terrifying force. But here he was, a human mechanic turned reluctant warrior, bound to the fate of an entire galaxy. He could feel the weight of it all, the enormity of the task ahead. The Forgotten Ones, those ruthless beings with power far beyond anything his species could comprehend, were not a force he could face alone. He had to trust in the alien crew, especially the warrior queen who had now become both his ally and something more. But as much as he relied on them, a part of him knew that only humanity's unexpected resilience could turn the tide in their favor. The ship's sensors flickered, and a low hum vibrated through the hull, signaling their proximity to the planet. The alien commander beside him didn't flinch at the noise, but Alex could see the subtle shift in the commander's posture. There was no more bravado in his demeanor. This was the moment where everything would change. "Prepare yourself," the commander said, his voice low but steady. "Once we land, there will be no turning back. The Forgotten Ones are watching. They've known we were coming for a while." Alex nodded, trying to steady his nerves. He was out of his depth, a simple mechanic from Earth, facing forces that had the power to erase entire civilizations. But as the commander had said, they underestimated him. And they underestimated humanity. His heart pounded in his chest, not from fear, but from the strange sense of purpose that was growing inside him. "What should I expect?" Alex asked, trying to prepare himself for the unknown. His hands, still shaky, gripped the seat, trying to quell the nervousness rising within him. The alien's expression softened just a fraction. "Expect nothing. The Forgotten Ones do not operate like any other force you've encountered. They don't fight by rules or honor. They fight to break you. They will use fear, confusion, and deception." The words stung. Alex had fought in his fair share of scraps back on Earth. Nothing that would prepare him for a battle like this. But the alien's words had a ring of truth that settled in his gut. There was no honor with the Forgotten Ones. They didn't care about the righteousness of their cause. They only cared about power, and they would stop at nothing to get it. As the ship broke through the planet's atmosphere, Alex could make out the faint outlines of buildings and structures below, just visible enough to make him wonder what kind of place he was about to step into. The landscape was barren, a desolate, rocky expanse stretching out in every direction. He could only imagine the horrors the planet had suffered during its long history of conflict. The ship descended further, and Alex could see the twisted remains of what had once been a thriving city. Buildings lay in ruins, torn apart by what Alex could only assume were the ruthless tactics of the Forgotten Ones. He could feel his stomach twist into knots. The remnants of the city were a graveyard, a silent testament to the cruelty of the Forgotten Ones and their insatiable hunger for destruction. As the ship touched down, the doors opened with a hiss, and Alex stepped out onto the harsh, dry surface of the planet. The ground beneath his feet was cracked and parched, the air thin and sharp. But it was the silence that unsettled him the most. It was an eerie, oppressive quiet, like the calm before a storm. "Stay close," the commander ordered, motioning for Alex to follow. "They will be watching." With each step, Alex's sense of foreboding deepened. The alien planet felt foreign and hostile in every way, from the cracked earth beneath his boots to the oppressive silence that hung in the air. He felt exposed, vulnerable. This wasn't a place for a human like him to be. But here he was. They moved quickly, the commander leading the way as they made their way deeper into the ruined city. Alex tried to focus on his surroundings, but it was hard to ignore the pounding in his chest. Every shadow seemed to loom with threat, every crevice hiding something waiting to spring out at them. The Forgotten Ones had left their mark here, and Alex had no doubt that they were still close, watching their every move. Finally, they reached a large fortified structure, one that hadn't been completely destroyed like the rest of the city. It stood tall and imposing, its walls lined with ancient alien symbols. The commander approached a hidden entrance, and with a series of quick hand movements, he unlocked the door. Inside was a darkened corridor, illuminated only by the faint, flickering glow of the ship's emergency lights. "This is where we make our stand," the commander said, turning to Alex. "We cannot afford to fail. If we do, the galaxy will fall." Alex nodded, feeling the weight of his responsibility. This was no longer about just surviving. This was about stopping a force that could wipe out everything and everyone. And for the first time in his life, Alex felt like he had something worth fighting for. They moved deeper into the building, the sound of their footsteps echoing in the silence. Every corner they turned, every new hallway they ventured down, seemed to pull them deeper into enemy territory. Alex's pulse raced, his senses heightened as the darkened corridors stretched on endlessly. "I don't know what's waiting for us," Alex said, his voice barely above a whisper. "But I'm ready." The commander gave him a sharp look. "I hope so, because what's coming will test you like nothing else ever has." As they continued to move deeper into the heart of the fortress, Alex could feel the presence of the Forgotten Ones closing in on them. The time for preparation was over. The time to face whatever horrors lay ahead was now. And no matter what happened, Alex knew that he would stand firm, ready to protect humanity's future against the greatest threat it had ever known. The air was thick with anticipation as Alex and the commander advanced deeper into the heart of the ancient stronghold. The walls, lined with mysterious symbols that flickered faintly, seemed to hum with a power that could be felt rather than seen. The ground beneath their boots was cold, the temperature dropping with every step they took further into the heart of the Forgotten One's domain. Alex's mind raced with questions, his thoughts spiraling as he tried to process everything that had led him here. The warrior queen, the mysterious forces he'd faced, and the ever-looming threat of the Forgotten Ones. It was all coming together. And yet, nothing seemed clear. He had no idea what they would find at the end of this journey, but there was no turning back now. "Keep your focus," the commander whispered, his voice low but urgent. "They are close. I can feel their presence." Alex nodded, his grip tightening on the weapon the alien forces had entrusted to him. It was unlike anything he'd ever used before, sleek, powerful, and designed for someone with the strength and precision of an experienced warrior. He wasn't that, but he had no choice. This fight wasn't about skill. It was about survival. Suddenly, a low growl echoed from the shadows ahead. Alex's heart skipped a beat. His instincts screamed at him to turn back, to run, but the commander's firm hand on his shoulder stopped him. He had no time to second-guess his decisions. The Forgotten Ones were here. The walls shook as something massive moved just beyond their line of sight, its presence sending ripples through the air. Alex could feel the tension building, the world around him seeming to close in as his breath quickened. He wasn't ready for this. No one could be. But as the shake drew closer, he saw something that sent a chill down his spine. The creature wasn't like anything he had ever seen before. It was a massive, hulking figure with glowing eyes and a body covered in dark, almost impenetrable armor. The Forgotten Ones were known for their terrifying physicality, and this being was no exception. It moved with predatory grace, each step echoing through the cold, empty corridors. Before Alex could react, the commander sprang into action, his movements swift and precise. He darted forward, his blade slashing through the air with deadly accuracy. But the creature barely flinched, its glowing eyes locking onto the commander with a malice that sent shivers down Alex's spine. Alex raised his weapon, his hands trembling, but there was no time to hesitate. The creature lunged, its claws extending, aiming for the commander's throat. In that instant, Alex acted on instinct, leaping forward and firing his weapon. The blast hit the creature square in the chest, but it barely slowed the massive being down. The creature let out a guttural roar, turning its focus toward Alex, its eyes burning with fury. For a moment, everything seemed to freeze. Time itself seemed to stretch as the two forces stood facing each other, locked in a deadly stare-down. "Move," the commander shouted, pushing Alex to the side just as the creature struck, its claws missing Alex by inches. He stumbled, barely keeping his balance, his heart pounding in his chest. The fight erupted into chaos. The creature roared again, swinging its massive arms in deadly arcs, each swipe powerful enough to level a building. Alex scrambled to get his bearings, firing another shot, but it barely had an effect. The creature was too strong, too resilient. The commander was moving faster than Alex could follow, his strikes quick and precise, but they seemed almost insignificant against the creature's might. Alex realized, with a sinking feeling, that the creature wasn't just physically superior. It was built for combat in ways that defied logic. It was as if the Forgotten Ones had created these beings for one singular purpose: to annihilate anything that stood in their way. The battle seemed to drag on forever, each second feeling like an eternity. Alex's arms were growing heavy, his energy fading as he continued to fight, but the creature showed no signs of slowing down. He could hear his own heartbeat, the pounding rhythm matching the chaos of the battle. Then, just as hope seemed to be slipping away, there was a flash of light from behind him. The warrior queen. She had arrived. With a speed and power that left Alex in awe, she charged into the fray, her weapon flashing with a deadly light. The creature hesitated for a moment, clearly surprised by the sudden arrival of such an imposing force. But before it could recover, the queen struck, her blade cutting through the air with unerring precision. The creature roared in pain, retreating slightly as it reeled from the blow. But the queen didn't give it a moment to recover. She moved with deadly purpose, each strike landing with precision, cutting away at the creature's defenses. Alex, his breath ragged, stood in awe of the warrior queen. She was more than a leader. She was a force of nature, a being who could command the battlefield with ease. Her presence was enough to turn the tide of the fight, and Alex knew that they had a chance now, perhaps their only chance. The commander, seeing the queen's intervention, pressed forward with renewed determination. Together, the three of them fought with a synchronicity that Alex had never imagined possible. The queen's movements were fluid, like a dancer in the midst of battle, while the commander's strikes were deliberate and brutal. And Alex, though still struggling to find his rhythm, pushed himself harder than ever before, determined not to let his allies down. The creature faltered, its strength beginning to wane under the relentless assault. The queen's final strike came with a swift, decisive blow, cutting through the creature's armor and leaving it crumpled to the floor, defeated. The silence that followed was deafening. For a moment, no one moved. Alex's chest rose and fell rapidly, his mind trying to process what had just happened. They had survived, barely. But this was only the beginning. The Forgotten Ones would not stop. This victory, however hard won, was just a small piece of the greater battle that lay ahead. The queen turned to Alex, her eyes meeting his with a fierce, yet knowing gaze. "This fight is far from over," she said, her voice steady and unwavering. "But we have shown them that we are not to be underestimated." Alex nodded, feeling the weight of her words settle on his shoulders. The stakes had never been higher, and the path ahead was uncertain. But with the queen by his side and the commander's unwavering strength, Alex knew that humanity's rise, against all odds, was just beginning, and he would be there, standing firm, ready to face whatever came next.